Hello there, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Molly Madonia, and I'm the founder and president of First Generation Professionals of Milwaukee. Welcome back to another installment of our Community Leader Interview Series, and we are very excited to welcome a very special guest. Lena DeLaet is redefining what it means to be a woman in tech in Milwaukee. After receiving her Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science and English from Marquette University, Lena joined the team at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, where she began to hone her skills as a relationship builder and professional connector. Following her time at the Journal-Sentinel and a year at Hearst Television, Lena transitioned her talents to Milwaukee World Festival, Inc., where she has leveraged her sales experience and community relationships to rise from sponsorship sales manager to a director of sales at Summerfest Tech. From the beginning, one segment of her role at MWF was to produce and expand a fresh initiative called Summerfest Tech, with a goal to convene technologists, startups, investors, nonprofits, and all other members of the tech ecosystem through a multi-day event. Now celebrating its 8th annual conference, Summerfest Tech is one of Milwaukee's premier technology showcases, featuring talk tracks, keynotes, breakout sessions, a pitch competition, and networking events. During an interview with the Wisconsin Tech Council, Lena describes a key attendee as executives and leaders, technologists themselves, including programmers and engineers, for engineers, and investors. We are thrilled to welcome Lena DeLaet to our Community Leader Interview Series. Lena, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Molly.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited for this.
Me too.
I'd love to kick us off with a topic near and dear to both of us, which is community service. According to your UWM instructor profile, you have had a variety of board and committee roles, including the Wisconsin Tech Association, Meta House, Milwaukee Artist Resource Network, or MARN, IC STARS, Marquette Mentors, and the Wisconsin Tech Council. This is absolutely incredible, and I would love for you to talk us through what service means to you.
Absolutely. I think service to me which is just part of my nature, is always saying yes to most everything. I think if it is able to provide me the ability to give back, to mentor, to make new connections, to learn myself, I think a lot of times community service, you think you're doing it for an organization or an individual, but you yourself are actually getting so much out of it too. And being able to engage at all different sorts of levels is really important for me as well. I think with things like the Wisconsin Tech Association and the Tech Council, those tend to be a little bit more executive leaning or a little bit deeper into the tech ecosystem. MARN obviously was a completely different sector, but that was located in the 3rd Ward. So situationally and geographically, it made sense to get more connected to an organization in the 3rd Ward. And things like Marquette Mentors, where, I mean, they say this all the time in the program, which I know you're involved in as well, but that the mentors learn just as much from the mentees as the mentees do from the mentors. And I've really seen that in my 3 years of doing that program. And so for me, it really just is a way to further engage with not only just Milwaukee, but people, not all the people that I'll be on boards with or do community service with or volunteerism with will stay in Milwaukee, but it still keeps me connected to other people. And that's just a huge part of my personality and why I kind of love to just get involved.
I know, I could not agree more. You don't realize when you start community service, like how much you're going to take out of it. Like, obviously we're serving missions of established organizations. Like a lot of times we are coming in and just leveraging our own talents in a different environment, but you really do take a lot away from it. And I get joy from doing it. I'm sure you feel that way too.
Yes, absolutely. I think, I'm always reinvigorated because it also seems like I'm not doing the same thing across multitudes of volunteer opportunities. Like I really try to keep a wide variety of my volunteer opportunities so that, yeah, there may be times where I run into similar people, but I'm not serving on the same boards or the same committees with the same people again and again. So there's a huge variety, both personal and professional, to my volunteerism.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I do see that. Like Wisconsin Tech Association, I see STARS, Wisconsin Tech Council. Those are obviously very professional in nature, but Marn is arts related. Like that's supporting artists. They have a fantastic community there. And then Meta House is women's service. Like, do you have any favorite moments or like most impactful moments from your community service?
I don't know if I really thought about this. I don't know if there's one that I can specifically narrow it down to, because each one, the through line for all of them is pride. So whether I'm creating a session for the Wisconsin Tech Association, I do their monthly programming sessions. When you see that room fill up with nearly 100 people, which for a small group is a lot for us, there's just that pride I feel in being able to pull that community together. When I go to Meta House's a gala, which was actually last week, and see a room of almost 600 people there to support the mission that I find super, super important to the health and well-being of women in recovery, to know that I had a hand in that through sitting on a couple of their committees, you just feel this sort of pride walking away from it. Or when you hear like your Marquette mentor text the program director that they're so happy that they met you and that they've already learned so much from you. It's just that feeling of pride that you sort of had a job well done and you were able to make an impact. That's what I tend to always remember when I come back to my volunteerism. And so I kind of look for opportunities to walk away from a situation with that same feeling of pride when someone asks me, do you want to, sit on this committee, or do you want to sit on this board? And typically the answer is yes, because I think most people understand where my passions lie. So it's been fairly easy to continue to serve on things that give me pride. But it's always the piece I keep coming back to each year when it's sort of time for that re-upping or that recommitment is, do I still feel that pride and that excitement to get involved? And so far the answer has been yes with most things. So
amazing. And that's how you've like found your sweet spot of community service and community leadership. Like, you're in the right place doing the right things with the right organizations. And that's
absolutely,
that's what that feels like for sure. Okay, let's get into a little bit of tech talk. So we were both at Summerfest when Summerfest Tech began as a 3-hour invite only pre-festival event in collaboration with the Business Journal, and is now one of the city's premier tech events. Multiple days, multiple venues. What are some of the tactics that you used to grow the event?
The number one I would say is relationship building. And that is truly, I know that it seems so obvious, but it's that and networking are the number one things that I always impart on anyone where they're like, how did you get more connected? Or how did you see the success of ABC come to fruition? It's truly through the networking and the relationships that you build that make it go far. And I think because what comes out of those relationships are true feedback. And that's something that I always have said a long time as I was sort of tasked with growing Summerfest Tech and not being a technologist really myself, like not being an actual developer or programmer or sitting in an IT department. I thought, what can I really do to grow a tech conference, not necessarily knowing the language or even knowing the topics and themes that we should cover. Well, it's truly in aligning yourself with the people who do, but knowing what your skills are, which is event production and keeping those lines of communications open, being organized, all of that kind of stuff is what I can bring to the table. And so when it comes to things like the work or the content programming topics, you can rely on a core group of people who you've made really great relationships and really great connections with to help guide you there, as well as provide true and honest feedback, whether it's on programming or things like logistics, which I always say are usually the easiest to change. So if the programming is a home run, I've done my job. But if it's the logistics stuff, that's super easy. I can always change that year after year. But it's being able to build those trusted confidants around you to help guide that. And that's why we have a steering committee and an advisory council for Summerfest Tech. They do different things, which is important. And it is important to always tap into their knowledge and their day-to-day sort of involvement in the space to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to land, is going to drive success for the attendee, which then ultimately means the conference has success.
Well, after 8 years, it's certainly seems as like a successful event. I see the invites like on LinkedIn and stuff when the event is going on, including like some of the pre-events and what have you. And it just seems like it's a whole different animal than it was 8 years ago. What does the evolution from where it started to where it is now? You've got multiple people, multiple touches, experts in this field helping you put on such a key, very important event to a lot of people in the city. What does that mean to you?
I think the important part from the 3-hour event to now the 4+ day conference is that it continued to represent everyone. I think that it could have easily in 8 years evolved into this maybe more exclusive paid event, something where not everyone felt like they were welcome at the table, but very similar to what we do here at Summerfest, we wanted to make sure that that inclusivity and accessibility always stayed. There are some aspects that we're adding on, like a golf outing and these tech ed accreditation courses that do have an additional cost, but the core of the programming is still free and accessible. And we continue to see that represented in our attendees, which for me is, the evolution isn't that it's continued to sort of like hone in on one particular audience. I see that pie grow, not necessarily the audience percentages change. So even if we, have X percentage of corporate attendees one year, we see that number go up, but not necessarily the breakout change very much, which means to me that we are constantly then still representing everyone in the ecosystem, whether you're in the corporate space, nonprofit space, whether you're an investor, student, or entrepreneur yourself, you still feel like you have a place here because we don't see one percentage just continue to shrink. The pie keeps growing. So for me, the evolution has mostly come in how do we continue to craft that message to where you're able to feel like there's something for everyone, but that it also is organized. And so I think that's what we're really seeing coming into 2025 is that instead of just sort of keeping it a general tech conference, we really are honing in on the AI space and even changing the conference name to be Summerfest Tech AI. So the evolutions that we're seeing is how do we really in our marketing and in our branding continue to connect with the greater tech audience and give it a little bit more, I always say like guardrails and direction, but still feel super, super
inclusive and super legitimate. Like,
yeah,
especially with AI talking about things that are directly on point to a wide variety of audiences and giving up and coming people in the space a platform and visibility and things of that nature as well. So that's got to feel really cool.
Yeah, it is. Again, it kind of goes back to that piece where when people walk away and say the programming was top notch and we do a survey every year and a lot of the feedback is less about the programming and more about, I had to wait maybe too long for lunch. And so it's like, okay, well, we can figure that out. We can bring out more lunches. We can bring them out quicker. But when the programming, especially not being a technologist myself, is landing and people are saying, oh, you missed it, you have to come next year, or you need to go watch this session because we record them. You need to go watch this session online. That is where I get a lot of the validation. And I think from where it came from, which was, really the programming was a singular panel to now almost 100 speakers every year of varieties of backgrounds and experiences is something that it's an evolution, but it's something that feels so natural. And again, I always compare Summerfest Tech to Summerfest in the way that there's not just one single music genre that you're going to see out on the grounds. Same thing. You're not going to see one type of title or speaker at the conference. It's going to be all over the board. And that's on purpose.
Yeah. Seems very by design. There's definitely something for everyone. I know this is going to be like asking you to pick a favorite child, but is there an aspect of the event that you like the best?
I mean, I'm a pretty social person. So the networking events are awesome. Again, for how much we can offer for free as part of this conference is a huge pride point for me. And that is because of our sponsors. They help us cover all those operational costs, which is amazing. But as much as people love the programming, I hear just as many accolades around the conference around the networking portions. As I was, I had a drink with someone who I used to work with years ago who now lives in Chicago, and we're working out them potentially becoming our chief technology officer. Like just conversations like that through what we know in the Midwest is kind of how business gets done, which is through relationships, networking, open communication, and those pieces of the programming, I feel like lend so much to the experience. If it was just the programming and there weren't sort of these networking breaks and breakfasts and especially the happy hours, I don't know that people would walk away feeling as fulfilled. And so for me, especially because some of the programming goes right over my head, not being a technologist, I love the networking pieces because I think that that's when people sort of let their hair down. And the fact that one of our networking pieces is at the music festival and integrates with that, I just think is so unique and so cool. And so that's probably my favorite one, because even last year we had people attend the conference who were from outside of Wisconsin and had heard of Summerfest, but had never been. And so they came for the tech conference and stayed for at least the Thursday part of the music festival. And we're like, I'm sorry, this exists. And so that for me is just like, fireworks in my brain, just getting so excited to continue to expose people to Milwaukee, the city that I love, to the tech conference, which obviously I pour, 50% of my workload into. And then when that intersects with the reason I think that MWF is, which is Summerfest, it really helps tie all that together. And again, that piece of pride just comes out. And so I would say that the networking is probably my favorite, although it's all amazing.
It is all amazing. And I love that you mentioned the networking, and I'm hearing you talk about networking in the context of community building. Mm-hmm. How do you think the networking at Summerfest Tech grows and expands and provides the wonderful visibility to the community citywide as a whole?
I think one, through accessibility. So because the tech conference is free, I talk a lot about it at different events, to different people one-on-one at different networking things that I do. And I always say, it's similar, again, to Summerfest, where if you don't love live music for some reason, because that's bananas, but it can happen, there's so much other fun and exciting things to do at the park while the music festival is going on that you should, especially if you can get in for free, come down and check it out. That's how I feel about the tech conference. If you've been interested in the tech ecosystem, people who work in the tech ecosystem, or your organization is involved, but you yourself maybe don't sit in the IT space, if you can attend the networking events, which tend to be after the conference is done, so 4:30, 5:30, something like that, so not necessarily during work hours, it's a great opportunity to get tapped in, to hear and see what is happening in this tech ecosystem. A lot of companies now aren't necessarily leading with, hey, I'm a manufacturing company. I'm a tech company that my industry is manufacturing. And so every company is almost a tech company at this point. And so I think that is what the networking piece allows, is hopefully, again, just, hair down, no pretenses. And this, how do I say, like, the people in the tech ecosystem, which is the number one attribution to why I think this has grown so well, is they're so welcoming. They're like, oh, you haven't met so-and-so? Let me connect you. Or, oh, I'm standing here talking with so-and-so, come on into this conversation. So I think if people were like, oh, why are you attending today? Or where are you working from? And it doesn't have anything really necessarily to do with tech, people are going to open their arms versus shut you out, to learn more about why you want to be part of it, to tell you what they do. And again, I run a tech conference as part of the ecosystem. So I have a very different perspective than maybe someone who develops or programs all day. And I can very much attest that I was welcomed with open arms when I wanted to learn how do we create the Midwest largest tech conference, which is the ultimate goal. So that is a huge piece for when it comes to like inclusivity and that accessibility, and why the networking is a key piece of the conference, is because that is how it will grow, is just introducing more and more people to it. And a networking event is a pretty easy way for people to do it without maybe feeling out of place or even anxious or stressed out to attend.
Certainly. Absolutely. And I think an important segment of those attendees, of those people interested in the networking, are the young entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. Especially those who may or may not be participating in like the pitch competition and building the connections that will eventually help them grow their idea, their business. I feel like I'm hearing you say a lot that people are willing to exchange those emails. Yes, I will sit with you. Yes, here's everything that I know. Here's how I can help you.
Yep.
And I think that's really important, especially for the constituents of an FGPM, like first generation professionals, needing to learn from those established professionals in order to fulfill their goals and advance like their needs and wishes and hopes in the space.
Yep.
So I think that's a really important segment of the attendees as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, can't go too far. We're both women too. And it's how do we make everyone feel like they have a space and place at the table? And with the conference, I think because it has such a variety of programming, some for the corporate space, some for entrepreneurs, which we're always trying to find the connection point between startup founders and small business owners. And I think that word entrepreneur does that. It seems to make both feel quite welcome in that space, which is important. But investors, students, et cetera, 50% of the world is women. And so is this a place where women can also feel like they can show up without it being, a good old boys club or maybe a skill or practice, like something like golf or something where they maybe don't have that in? And it's absolutely, especially again, with the networking events, it's huge, but we really try to make sure that representation is there when it comes to speakers and who else is involved, who sits on our steering committee, who sits on our advisory council. All those things matter when it comes to making sure that it is inclusive, not just in like, do I feel like I can come, but I feel like I can come and I'm going to see representation there too. And so I think being able to have this platform to do that is, I guess, just a really great way to not only support the community, but also just support like the main community that I'm part of, which is women. So that's a big piece of just kind of always having our eye and our intentionality on making sure that it feels very welcoming across the board.
Well, I'm sure people appreciate it all the time. Like I got my first job in the legal profession through networking. It was with the Summerfest former general counsel, Frank Nicotera, who we both know.
Yep.
My first boss, shout out Frank. And we were at a Marquette Law networking event and just met, and I offered my time, and he was gracious enough to give me some of his time, which turned into a job interview, which turns into my foot in the door in the legal field. So that's like my networking story and the anchor that I had into the legal field. So I cannot speak more highly of the importance of networking and the opportunities that events like this give to first generation professionals, young entrepreneurs, people who just need someone to meet one person who believes in them, and then they take it from there and they turn it into something really special.
And that's not something I necessarily had in my first career roles. I don't know if you're as familiar, but in the advertising space, there's a lot of protectiveness around who your customers and clients are. And so there's not a lot of like, it's gotten better, but especially when I was younger, there's not a ton of peer-to-peer networking that happens. It is, but it's also very guarded when it does happen. It's like, oh, you work with this client? Well, I do too. And I've worked with them longer. And, we do this off work hours. And it just becomes a little bit more tense when you're talking about networking when it came to advertising. I don't see that at all in the tech ecosystem. And honestly, I haven't even seen it really when it comes to Summerfest, which technically sort of, my director of sales role working with our corporate partners at Summerfest is technically overlapping a bit with that advertising and marketing budget sometimes. But because of who we are and we sit in such a different space as a tool for that, it hasn't been as tense. And then certainly when it comes to tech, there are tons of events that happen. I sit on a board that has a tech conference this week, actually, and there's no sense of, well, maybe you shouldn't like attend this portion of the board meeting because we're going to be talking about the sponsors for the conference. Like, if anything, our sponsor person on the Tech Association board, he's always like, hey, you're trying to get more involved in Milwaukee. You want to have more of a presence. Our conference with Wisconsin Tech Association is one way, but a month later, there's a 4-day tech conference. Go talk to Lena. And the amount of sharing of contacts and resources that we, I think, provide each other in the ecosystem is huge. And that can be from a sales perspective, but it can also be from, like you were saying, just like a networking and knowledge sharing perspective, and the amount of people that are willing to grab, especially now with Zoom, or people trying to get away from Zoom and want to grab coffee in the morning. People are just more open to meeting for that half hour. And I think they also recognize that that's part of what will not only propel the ecosystem, but also their own personal growth and goals too. Like to meet with someone who you might think you're mentoring, but walk away being like, oh, wow, this actually might be a really cool company to invest in. I'm not a current investor, but I know one, and I invest in a fund with it. It just all kind of ties together. So I think that the networking piece and being open to saying yes and meeting someone, even if for a quick half hour, is super important.